What we're going to do this afternoon really is just take a nice leisurely look around the portal and help you guys to understand what's in there, what you can see, and give you a little bit more information about the information and the results so that you guys can kind of start to access that information, break it down, and start to turn it into something more meaningful for you. Okay, so if we have questions, as I'm sure there will be, you do have the option to type in. So Tony and Maria, already I can see that you're ahead of the crew. And good morning from Iowa. Well, good afternoon from not so sunny UK. We've got a bit beautiful blue sky as I look out the window, but mostly that's being chased away today by grey clouds. Just as a heads up, the weather forecast did mention that at some point we might have a thunderstorm. So if there is any interference, crackling or loud bangs, please don't be alarmed. It's just the good old-fashioned weather in the UK. Right, so I'm just going to check the list of attendees. We've got a few more, so I can see Nancy and Susan have come in. Might be having a little problem there. What I'm going to try and do in this webinar is I'm actually going to try and talk you through the portal itself, and probably it's best if we don't get into specific questions. We've got your privacy to consider, and we're really keen on making sure that that is maintained at all times. I know we're all in the same boat and we all want to learn, but it's probably best if we do take specific questions about people's results offline, and we can deal with those. All right, so I think maybe we've got quite a few people here, and I know that this will be recorded. So it's something that is going to be available for you guys to access again. So some of you might be sat there with notepads and trying to scribble things down furiously. Honestly, don't worry. You will be able to get this online, rewind, and listen in your own kind of time and speed. So the Living DNA portal, we all know that it's, or actually, sorry guys, I've been talking at you now for a good couple of minutes and I've forgotten to tell you my name and a little bit about myself. So my name is Kate. I am part of the customer service team here at Living DNA. I've been with the company for the last 3 years and I've seen it go from having to send kits directly out from our office to having to get sort of fulfillment centres and being able to go from the UK to the US to attend trade shows, and really seeing the family of not only employees at Living DNA, but our customers grow as well. So hopefully you're in good hands. Now you know a little bit more about me. Let's start and go into our portal. So first of all, you want to be making your way along to the website, which is www.livingdna.com. Once you're there, you can see the option to sign in, and you just need to hit that, pop in your email address and then your password. If you're anything like me, you might need to refresh that from time to time because my memory is not always what it should be for passwords. Luckily, that's very easy, and just after that, there is an option to reset your password. So if you can't remember it, or it's coming up with an error message, it might say something like bad credentials. That generally means that what you're typing in now isn't matching with what was typed in when you actually set up the account. So it's a good idea just to go back, delete everything from your boxes, re-enter that information in fresh. Sometimes your computer will help you and it will remember information, but if that's not quite correct, then also that can cause a problem and won't allow you to log in. Once you have been able to log in and you are then into the portal itself, if you can see the cursor there moving about, I'm going to direct you across to the left-hand side of the page. Now you'll see here that we've got a couple of different coloured dots, each with their own little picture in, and there are some accompanying words there as well. This is kind of the control centre of your portal, really, in terms of looking at your results and being able to navigate through. And it's the way that I always use to go through. So we're already logged into a set of results here, which we can see. And the first thing I think we'll go through, because it's what quite a lot of us want to find out about anyway, is our family ancestry. So if I click on, oh, there we go, there's a dictionary definition of family there. If I click on here, it will then open up all of these options below, which may not be visible the first time you go in. You can see here we've got a map, the what makes you, a chart, and through history. So these are all different sections of your family ancestry. And the thing that we kind of want to know really, most of all, is where we're all from, and where our ancestors are all from, really. So this is what happens when you click on the map view. And it's a really nice way to be able to see your results. And in order to help you understand this a little bit more, we've given you 3 views. So you'll see here already, I'm looking at the complete view. This is the default, and this is where everybody will be taken in when they click on that map view. The complete view, as you can see from the little pop-up that's come up here, is where we've attempted to assign all your ancestry, allocating unassigned percentages to regions to which they look most similar. Now with this, there will be more uncertainty associated with these assignments. Okay, so it's a good idea to look at this view. I always look at this view first because it's kind of the most exciting, all right? It's where anything that we're not entirely sure about will be put to the best guess. And so if there's something that you're trying to trace down, it's a complete picture of your DNA, all right? If we look at standard, moving on to that, because that's the second view that we have available for you. Now here we highlight the sources of your ancestry, which are likely to be present, using our best guess of the exact source. Ancestry cannot be attributed to one of our reference populations. In that case, will be shown as unassigned. Now, the benefit to having these 2 views is that if you have something in standard and it does indeed come up with an unassigned percentage in this part of the list here, you can then sort of think, okay, well, let me click in complete. And then you can get an idea of bits that are appearing in this view that aren't appearing in this view. And that kind of could help you understand a little bit more about this. The third view that we offer for you is the cautious view. Now here, what we've done, and this is different to the complete and standard views, in that if I'm just going to go in here and drill down a little bit, so I'm rushing ahead of myself, but it will help us understand. If you can see on the map here, all these different coloured regions, these are individual and single regions. So if we then go into cautious, what we have done is grouped some of those regions. So you can see here, this in the lighter green, and here will actually be ancestry that is linked. So in the other 2 views, this would have been single and individual regions. But in this view, because there is a commonality between all the signatures in those regions, then they have been linked together. So it's related ancestry. All right, so let's go into complete first of all, because that does make use of all the DNA that we've got. Now, I know a few of you might be popping in some questions, and after this section, I will go through and take questions just basically on this particular section of the site for you. Okay, so we've covered all of these views here. Moving down, we've then got the global, regional and sub-regional breakdown. So at a global view, you can see from the map that it will pick out everything, and it's really kind of just like headlines. If we want a little bit more definition on that, we can click on regional, and you can start to see here that as we go down the list, we're starting to get a little bit more information. But still, looking at this, and I know a lot of guys who are taking the test are really excited to find out about Ancestry in Great Britain and Ireland. That's kind of akin to what you might find being given in other sets of testing results. But we want to take you a little bit further than that. And so to do that, we're just going to click here and look in. And this is when we really start to see then the value appearing in the results, because you can see here the percentages of the region that you have inherited from your ancestors. Now, from this person, there's a nice spread of information, and that kind of is actually great, because we've taken you one step than maybe we would have done. But wouldn't it be nice to find out a little bit more about Devon? I know that's where my ancestors came from, and I want to find out a little bit more about that. So what I would do is click on here, and you'll see that it's now showing me the area, the geographical area that is covered by that signature. Now, what we're not doing here is we're not saying that that is the outline of Devon, but what we're doing is saying this is the geographical location that is covered by this signature. Okay, now we know that this is Cornwall here, and the division between Devon and Cornwall is pretty much actually, if you have a map to hand, along the border. And that's a really interesting thing that, you know, has been identified by being able to look at the signatures in the way that we've done. So again, there's another layer of information. If I then scroll down my page, and again, how far you have to scroll will depend on how many regions that you've inherited. You'll see that there is actually text that talks about the history of that area or that region, and actually will give you some information to help you understand just how people got there in the first place. Because we all are aware of where we are now, but we don't necessarily have an idea of where we've come from previously, unless we're amazing history buffs, in which case it's a really nice sort of little story that you can check your knowledge base against. Now, interestingly with this, because every population is made up by what we call a contributing region, we've also been able, for the British Isles, to break down that mix. So this is kind of, that we're looking here, the contributing regions, and this is almost like the recipe. So if we wanted to make a Devonian and look at the signature, we know that we've got 16.6% of that signature made up by people that have come to live and work and, you know, enjoy life in that area from France. The same from Germany, Denmark, Belgium, Spain, Sweden and Norway. All right, so that's how you kind of understand that and use that information. It doesn't mean that you are those percentages for that region. It just means that in order to have carried the Devon signature, you actually, you know, before your guys got there, there will have been people that moved into that region from all of these places. And then following on down, you've then got some citations. So standard form for this really, it just shows you where the information that's been talked about in the longer list has been taken from, and also is linked. So if you wanted to, you could maybe go and read a little bit more and expand your knowledge even more. Okay, so if I scroll back up to the top, because we've got you in there, we need to get you back out. And just very quickly, now I've explained how that works, I want to talk a little bit about the percentages. So you'll see here that you've got 69.9%. So this amount here is the overall for all of these percentages adding up. So you've got 13.2, 8.4, 8.2 are the respective amounts that of DNA that you have from those regions. Now, as we start coming down the list, you'll start to see that those numbers get lower. And when we get to probably about here, 5% or lower, we tend to say, so anything from Northumbria down in these results, it's possible that that is a real signature from an ancestor that is in your family tree, or it is possible that it's something called noise. And that is a little bit of interference when the sample was running, and it basically gives like a false read on the data when that comes out from the test. This is something that happens all the way across with testing. So if you are finding that you have very small amounts of DNA, sort of 5% and lower, and they just really don't make sense because you know that your family were, you know, for instance, you've owned a farm and everybody has come from that village or worked on the farm, and you know, your family really were in one area and it doesn't make sense. Apart from kind of a travelling salesman stopping by and being overly friendly, then it's most likely that it is actually going to be a little bit of interference on the sample, so you don't need to pay too much attention to it. Now, of course, every coin has a flip side, and the flip side of that is that also with those small calls, 5% or below, it could be very ancient ancestry that has survived recombination, and so it is actually a genuine read, but something that's come from very, very, very long, you know, in your ancestors, long ago rather. So it's kind of having a little bit of knowledge about your family and looking at those results objectively, but hopefully that will give you a little bit more of an understanding about the percentages and how to explore this particular section. Okay, so would anybody like to have a question? Let's have a look and see what we've got. Okay, so my question today is, why does my mother line show origins that are so different from my family ancestry and father line? Okay, brilliant question, because all we've done so far is talk to about your family ancestry. So I guess now is a good time to be prompted, James, and move on to mother line and father line. This type of ancestry here in your family ancestry is made up from, or found out from, the 22 chromosomes that are in your DNA that are passed to you from both mum and dad. There is a 23rd chromosome, and that is what is responsible for giving us our mother line and our father line. So if we receive mother line and father line information, it's tied to a larger and wider section of the population. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is I will go through and have a quick check and see if we've got any other questions on the family ancestry, and then we can circle back to that, James, when we go through. So please bear with me, don't run off just yet. Okay, so I've got another question here that I'm going to read out to say, what level of county location breakdown is there within the Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland? So at the moment, we are breaking Ireland and Northern Ireland into the two regions. And we know that there's a lot more that we can do there And so we are working incredibly hard to be able to break that down even further. We do look for samples, and there will be, I think, and I'm not entirely sure, sorry, I'm being a bit cagey because it's really, really exciting news, and I'm not sure whether I can tell you, but it's only us here, isn't it? So I should be okay. So we think that there should be an update coming for Irish Ancestry in the next few months, okay? So at the moment we've got those 2 regions, but you haven't heard it from me, but in the next few months we should be able to update that. What we'll be doing is sending surveys, and then obviously you'll see lots of excitement and posts on social media, so you'll know that all that good stuff is there. Okay, let me just have another quick scan and see if we've got another question. So somebody here, I think Judy, hi Judy, is saying, can having blood transfusion change your DNA results? And a blood transfusion wouldn't, but you may find that if you've had a bone marrow transplant, you would need to check with a sort of, medical doctor to find out if there has been any change with that. Okay, let's have a quick look. I'm just scrolling, sorry guys, I'm trying to read and scroll through, and there's quite a few questions here. Let's have a look. Now I can see one that just says, will update on Ireland and Northern Ireland automatically. So this again is following on about Ireland. I know, will it automatically be applied to the results? So the way that we work is that once we're able to deliver that new information and it's been quality checked and tested, and we know that it does what it says on the tin, then absolutely results are rerun. All right, so I might just have a quick slurp of tea. Other beverages are available. All right, so let's have a quick look. The circles showing the bits are not showing in my regions, as we saw on the Devon sample. Okay, so I'm not quite sure what you mean about that. So if I go back, do you mean in here? And then if I scroll down, do you mean this bit here? If so, that is something that is fairly sort of set and standard. So because it's the same for everybody that has that signature, it should actually be in that particular place. If it's that when we're looking at your results there, that you just don't have Devon at the top here, then that's likely because you don't have somebody with ancestry from Devon in your tree, okay? And so that's why you wouldn't see that. These results won't list all of the regions that we test. They will only show the regions that have been identified from your DNA. Okay, now let's go and see if we've got any other questions, or are we ready to move on to our another line? Let's have a quick look. And this is a great question. So which results are more accurate, the cautious or the standard? So when we look at cautious, we can say that we are more confident about them because we have taken the smaller regions and grouped them together to make a bigger region. So if you imagine a torch beam, you can focus a beam of light so it becomes very, very defined and very tiny, and it lights up a very small area very, very well. Or you can make that beam a little bit wider and it will light up a bigger area, but there's kind of less detail in what you're looking at because the light is not as strong. And so that's kind of a little bit more how I would sort of recommend you use those views. So The cautious, we're more confident with, because we know that, for instance, if there is a region where the two regions or the signatures are similar, by grouping those together and saying it's related to those areas, we can be more sure that that is actually where the ancestry comes from. So we increase the area, that increases our confidence. But if we're looking, the question really, I guess, is between complete and standard. And I would kind of say standard is possibly a good place to look, because if we're not sure about something there, then we don't assign it. So I hope that answers that question for you. Okay, right, so I think what we need to do is have a little move on, and let's go and have a look at, I'll just very quickly actually, sorry, because I know I haven't done this, so this is just to show you what is in this section. And if you like playing with dots on the dotty man, maybe you've got grandkids that kind of want to have a look and see how grandma or granddad is made up, then this is a really great way for them to understand it. All right, so the chart here is basically the same thing. If we've got any dessert lovers out there, then a pie chart might be something that interests you. But again, it will all be the same information, but it's just giving you a different way of looking at it. The throughout history is something that does cause people some confusion sometimes, but basically what it's saying is that if we look at this point in time and we look at the world today, these are the areas where you're going to find people with whom there's potentially a common ancestor. And so what we do is, as we go back in time, you'll see that that world starts to become fuller and fuller and fuller. So if we were to look at this time, the people that were alive at that time, and you now today, would be able to find people alive today in all of these areas. The little tiny dots represent populations. So where we see those purple dots, and the more closely clustered they are, the more people live in that area today. Okay, so hopefully that's a very, very quick run through of that, and it will explain for you how that is working out and what that will show you. Okay, let's have a quick look. I've just got a quick what did I do with the dotty man? Well, that's a leading question, isn't it? Let's go back really, really quickly. So it's the what makes you. So basically, Dale, everything in this particular view is exactly the same information that you're going to see in your map view here, but it is just shown in a different way. Okay, so basically what we're doing is giving you the outline of a person, and then we're showing you based on dots. So you can either have them so they're mixed all the way through, or it's a very clear idea. We do work with schools and things like that, so it's a really good way to present this information to children. And also really just somebody who you know, likes to see something in a different visual format than a map. Okay, right, let's have a quick look. So I've got a question here to say, is it possible to have a 20% difference between complete and cautious results? I guess it would depend on an individual case. So that sounds like it might be getting to where we're looking at an individual test. Anything is possible, but you should always have really 100% of your DNA able to be, you know, looked at. So all right? But I'm just seeing the time, and thank you so much for listening to me, guys, because I know I have been chatting away now for about half an hour, I think. And I'm just conscious that we've only got half an hour left and 2 sections to go through. So I'm going to move on to the mother line and the father line. If we start with your mother line first, all right, so once we've come down here, again, I've got no results found. That's part of my computer, not part of the actual site itself. So your mother line, if I just read from the screen for you, your mother line is a direct maternal heritage passed down from mother to their child through the mitochondrial DNA. Males receive this DNA, but they don't pass it on. So the DNA that you receive will always come from your mum. And if you're a girl, you'll pass the exact copy of that on to your children. If they're female, they'll pass it on to their children, and so on and so on. So when we're talking about this kind of DNA, it's very different to the family ancestry DNA, which changes pretty much, well, definitely changes with every generation, and even changes with every child. Even siblings will have differences in their family ancestry DNA. With your mother line and father line, however, if we are looking at the mother line, if you imagine that right at the very, very start of time, a locket was created, and that was passed down to the first daughter of the first woman, it would be an exact copy. That locket was then passed down from generation to generation, and it always kind of stayed with the first daughter of the mother. And so as it comes and is passed down, it's essentially the same thing, but things happen. It may pick up a few scratches, it may have a photo put inside, somebody may need to refit the clasp, it may have a different necklace used with it, but essentially through all of that time and being passed down, it is the same thing with small changes. And that's basically what your mitochondrial DNA is. So because we know that, what we can do is we can establish a baseline for a signature for mitochondrial DNA, and that's kind of linked to mitochondrial Eve, so one of the first women ever. And then what we do is we look at the signature or the pattern of your mitochondrial DNA and compare it to that original pattern. And then that lets us see where you fit in to the actual mother line. Now, what this means is as we scroll down, you'll get a coverage map. Okay, now this particular coverage map has Brazil, Portugal, United Kingdom, Italy, and Saudi Arabia. Now, for those of you that have been paying close attention, you'll notice that hardly any of those places were listed in the family ancestry. And so you might think, okay, well, this is where it all falls apart. But actually what this is saying is that if you were to go to Brazil, that you would have around 5% of the people, there would be somebody with whom you could share a common ancestor. So it's basically the root or where people are today, really. I can see this particular person is T2b, is their haplogroup. So anybody that also shares that will also have this information relevant to them, okay? So if you go to Brazil, Portugal, the United Kingdom, Italy, which I think is a small crossover with the family ancestry results, and Saudi Arabia, you would find people living today with whom you have a common ancestor on your mother's line. Okay, so I hope that makes sense for you. And if I carry on going down, now you'll notice here, we've got the haplogroup T2b, and quite often people say, well, I don't understand, what does T2b mean? And it's pretty much just like a name. So, you know, a surname might be Baker, for example. So this is the equivalent of that surname. Now within a tree, quite normally we'll be able to take you down and we can assign what's called a subclade. Now that just means it's a specific branch within this particular tree, because haplogroups are often referred to as trees. In this instance, you can see here that actually there isn't a subclade. Now that can happen from time to time, and a couple of reasons behind that are that either that when the sample was taken, the quality of the sample wasn't quite high enough for us to be able to go any further than the haplogroup, or it could be that it's a very rare subclade and it's not something that we have information. So we do have a look at that, and we do update the actual haplogroups every 2 weeks. You will find that on some of your lists, if I just scroll back up very quickly to your coverage map, some of you will have a lot more countries listed here. And that's brilliant, and that's really exciting. And what you might find is that when you very first go in to look at your results, you're going to have huge numbers of countries listed here. This whole page could be full. And then over time it changes, and you might start to get something that looks a little bit more like this. And actually what that is likely that it is a new haplogroup that's been created. So we can see here T2b is likely that the T is the original haplogroup, and then 2b might have been a previous subclade, but that has been actually upgraded to a haplogroup in its own right. So it's exciting if you get something like this, but quite often people look at that and think, oh, well, I've got less than I had originally, and I'm really, really disappointed. But actually it means that science, you're at the front of science, and you're as far as we can take you at that point. And you know, we really just need science to sort of get a chivvy on and find out that little bit more information so we can make these lists longer. Because this, you know, we're not telling you that 5% of your DNA on your mother's side, or 5% of your mother is from Brazil or Portugal, although you know, it's not to be used like that. This is very different information, and we are aware that the percentages, because you've got that view and that information in your family ancestry, it's trying to work out how we better explain that going forward. But that's kind of a good takeaway. We're not telling you that that's the makeup of your mum, but that's there. So just going to move on very quickly to the migration map. This, I click on there, will take me in. And when we look at this, so this is where we believe everybody started in Africa, and then we believe that groups of people, for one reason or another, would have gone off exploring, and then they would have settled. And do you remember at the very beginning I talked about this locket, or this original signature that was there? This is where that would have been there. And so each time we get to another one of these little dots, sorry, then we see a change or a mutation in that signature. And so that then creates a whole new tree or forest of trees within that group. And that's kind of, in essence, how a haplogroup works. So you can see we started here, moved out. There will then have been people that branched off and remained in Africa. There will have been people then that carried on migrating and crossed over, and then carried on upwards. I'm not sure whether these guys were following a sat-nav, probably not, but they do seem to have gone a little bit back on themselves there. And then we've got to where this particular person is today. Now you'll notice again on here that where this terminates isn't necessarily where the main part of this person's family ancestry came from. And that's because the information that we have on this haplogroup and this route is a suggested point and theorized point. okay? And so this is where we kind of are comfortable saying that it has been found and how it's got there. If we were to look at this in another couple of 100 years, the chances are we'd see some more lines and some more dots coming from here, and that would take us further on and then start to fit in with that. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the phylogenetic tree. Now this is something that's quite difficult to show really well on a screen, and you might find that you spend a lot of time scrolling in and out and sort of trying to move it around and make sense of it and look at it. But again, it's just showing you everything that is in that particular tree and how it relates. So this is almost like the blueprint of your migration map. All right, so if we I'm trying to zoom across here, looking at the screen. So if we look at the top of this, you can see that right at the very top of our screen here, I think I have something showing that you've actually got there the start. So that is the very source, and that's kind of like the route that we looked at on the map that's showing us in Africa spreading out. And then every time that we come down a step, there is a change or a mutation in that DNA. And so you'll see that this is sort of the line that you have followed, but you'll also notice that there are lots of other different letters on there as well. And so each of those then goes on and becomes its own tree or its own branch. So hopefully that's a very, very quick tour of the map and the phylogenetic tree, and that will let you know where that is. So I think if you have found that useful, that mother line and your father line are exactly the same kind of types of DNA. And then your information that you've got within those two portals is going to be accessed and viewed the same way. The difference is that your mother line comes from the X chromosome that's given to you by your mother, and only males will receive father line. So if you're a woman sat here, female sat here, and you're looking and you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, I don't have that father line, that seems a bit mean. The fact that you received, when you were conceived, an X chromosome from your mum and an X chromosome from your dad means that you are female, and so at that point, when the option to pass the Y chromosome on, that wasn't taken. So it is only men who receive that, because it's on chromosome 23, which is the last chromosome that makes up a human being and is what decides the sex or biological sex of a person. Okay, so hopefully with all of that, it's given you a little bit more information. I'm going to have a quick scan through the questions because I think we've got about 15 minutes left together today, and just see if there's anything that I can go through. Now I know I did start off by saying, but I don't know if everybody was here then, that some people had also sent questions about specific results, and we weren't going to look at those today because of security. But if you do need help, if you have already sent a question, they will have been sent on to the support desk, and so the guys there on the desk are working as quickly and hard as possible to get everything answered and sent back to you. But I just want to have a look. We've got James here again to say, when you say you have a common ancestor, how many generations back is that? Because if you go far enough back, don't we pretty much all have a common ancestor? And that's beautiful that that knowledge is out there with you, James, because that is part of what we try and demonstrate. So from a haplogroup point of view, it could be the common ancestor that you have in a location is mitochondrial Eve, you know, or mitochondrial Adam if we're looking at a father line. So that is, you know, long time ago. It doesn't necessarily have to be that when you look at that route and you look at that map that they are people within the last, you know, 5 to 6 or 10 generations of your family. So it can go right the way back. And unfortunately, because records haven't been kept for as long as a lot of family ancestry buffs would like, we can't actually see where those connections are. So the next one we've got is what's a subclade, and that's Maria. So when we look, we look at the tree, and we talked about a haplogroup being actually the signature that you carry in that particular piece of DNA, and a subclade is just a more finer point, and it's kind of, if you imagine a tree, so we're going to use this one for example. So you can imagine a tree, you've got your trunk and then you've got branches, so that's going to be kind of the main core of your haplogroup. And then when you look along that branch, you're going to have leaves, and your subclade are kind of like the leaves on your tree. So it's where you sit within that particular haplogroup. So if we are able to get that for you, then that's a really nice thing to have, to know. And when you're going online then and you're researching, or if you're doing family history, especially for things like a father line, a subclade can often be very useful to tie in with surname research and things like that. Okay, so let's have a quick look. It says here, my mother line shows Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry. When clicking on that to see the map, it's not showing. Is it a bug, or is there a reason for this? Okay, let's have a quick look. Okay, so just looking at that, I'm trying to understand where that would show, and I'm so sorry for my confusion. Just with Jewish ancestry, it is really difficult to kind of pinpoint. There was a movement of people of the Jewish faith, or the diaspora really, and what happened was people moved for one reason and another, and they then formed groups and were kind of marrying within that group. So there is a commonality amongst people of the Jewish faith, but it's not tied to a specific region because of the history of the Jewish faith and the diaspora that I mentioned earlier. So what it does mean is that because you have a group of people that are moving, but always joining and marrying and living within kind of closed groups, there are only a set number of bits of DNA that kind of are there. And so there are higher occurrences of certain bits of DNA within people of the Jewish faith, but those bits of DNA are also found in people outside of that faith group. So it's not that you can say that specific piece of DNA makes me Jewish, but there is a higher chance of having that piece of DNA if you are from a Jewish faith. The living DNA test works by looking at geographical regions. and so it's likely that it will have within a mother line Ashkenazi Jewish as a percentage, so with people with whom you would share ancestry from a mother line point of view, but it's not actually something that we report on in terms of your family ancestry with a geographic location. I'm sorry, that was quite a long explanation, but hopefully that's covered it for you. Okay, so I just want to very quickly have a click here on family networks, because I know we've got about 10 minutes to go. If you guys haven't opted in and gone and had a look at this and you are interested, this is the option that you need to go for in your browser. So it's green for go for family networks. When you get there, you have the option to opt in. You can see that this person already has opted in, and if they were to change their mind, you can just simply come back here and click opt out, and it will take you out of the process. If you're kind of sat there thinking, yeah, but why would I opt in? It's a great tool that we have recently kind of introduced. It started at the beginning of this year really, started at the end of last year, beginning of this year. What we do is we use your DNA and match you to people with that DNA, and going forward we will then be able to try and fit those matches in into a family tree. Now, because this is a new launch, this is kind of still running in a beta. So what a beta means is that we are really happy with what it does, but we put it out to test it and to get feedback and to see whether people like the service, whether it works for them, whether it's not, you know, kind of working. Now, in order to match, you do need numbers of people opting into the service, and we have had about 50,000 more people opting in since January 2019. So I know initially, like with anything, when it starts off, it's kind of a slow burn, and the more and more people get excited about it and join and start to opt in and share with their friends and family to opt in, then the better the service is going to be. So if you guys haven't opted in yet, I would love to recruit you as my cheerleaders, and you can go out there and shout and get excited. You know, lots and lots of you know, good, exciting thoughts about doing it. If you think it's not for you, that's absolutely fine. But as I say, it is a really, really exciting time to be able to get involved in that. Let's have a look at anything else. So if you wanted to, just moving through, I'm really sorry, I'm rushing now, guys, because I've talked far too much. The download raw data option, if you know what you want to do with your raw data and you understand raw data and how it works, you can go in there and it's fairly self-explanatory. If you've got your research and you wanted to opt into research, then that's generally stuff that's going to benefit humanity. It's not shared with third parties. You'll be asked for sort of details about your ancestors and their place of birth, because we use that to put everything together to kind of identify patterns and things like that. You may want to share your results. It will not share them straight away and send them out into the big wide world, but it will create a link that you can copy and send to people via an email so that they can go in and have a little look at that as well. All right, so with any of those things that we're now covering, these are completely optional, and you know, something that you guys will choose to do should you want to. So have we got any more questions? Let's just go, because I know we've got lots and lots of questions, and if I haven't had time to answer them, we will, I think, try and get these so we can get back to people individually. I think I'm going to have a really exciting afternoon coming back to you all. So let's have a look. I've got people may be in the matching service here. It looks Dale, I think. Hi again. You don't have any matches yet. I'm really sorry about that. And it is, I think I may have already covered really just that we kind of started this. A lot of other companies, because I'm going to mention that there are other matching services out there, but those services probably have been running for up to 10 years. So if you think that we're in year 1 and another site is in year 10, they've got 9 years on us basically. So there are going to be more people in the other matching services, which is kind of why we tend to find out that they will be there. But we were at Roots Tech this year, and we have had a huge number of people, 20,000 people have updated and opted in since Roots Tech, and that was kind of March this year. And that was in addition to people that were already in it. So, you know, it's very, very early days for the service. But I guess this is kind of the part where we maybe need to say, well, we can only be as good as the numbers that we have opting in. So it's back to that request for cheerleaders, please. So let's have a quick look. Okay, so Tony, I'm really pleased. You've just said that this has been great. I'd forgotten that I'd uploaded here, so now plenty to look at today, which is absolutely fabulous. I'm just going to have a very quick squiz through because I'm sure you guys have all got a few other bits and bobs to use. So Karen, I can see here about the research. I think the tech team are doing a little bit of updating. They are always tweaking something, making something more secure, or doing something. And I think research and potentially download might be giving people a little bit of jip this week. So I think if you're clicking on that and you're having a bad experience either with research or the share option, I would say leave it alone for a little while and come back to it in, normally it's about 24 hours that we ask that you allow them to finish doing what they're doing. And of course, when you come back, make sure you've cleared your cookies and your cache before signing back in using a Chrome browser if possible. Okay. So we are going to be doing this again. I'm not sure whether it will be myself or whether you'll get to meet one of the other members of the team. So it's just really, thank you very much. Let's have a look. So I've got another message here from, pronunciation is not brilliant, but it could be Jeffa. Thank you for the webinar, Kate. I really wanted to see a ton more details in Ancestry globally, please. And so I'm not sure whether you mean that you would like me to have gone through things a little bit more, or whether you'd just like us to be able to get more regions. If it's the latter, then yep, absolutely, that's definitely something we want to do. Just really to explain that it does take an incredibly large amount of time to go ahead, collect samples, to quality check them, and to make sure that they are right for us to use. We've got more webinars to come. There's another one at 3:30, which should go on till 4:30, and that's the science behind family networks. And then a really exciting one at 5 p.m. is Ask a Scientist. They do tend to be nocturnal creatures, so they will be waking up from about 5 p.m. onwards, if you can head to that. Okay, and as I say, more monthly webinars to come, but for now, thank you so much for spending time with me, guys. It's been a blast. Bye-bye.